And it is official. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine is Hillary Clinton's running mate. And in their first appearance together, they wasted no time in going after their Republican opponents, Donald Trump and Governor Mike Pence.
I have to say that Senator Tim Kaine is everything Donald Trump and Mike Pence are not.
Do you want a you're fired president or a you're hired president? Do you want a trash-talking president or a bridge-building president? We've seen again and again that when Donald Trump says he has your back, you better watch out.
That same anti-Trump tone set to be the focus of Bernie Sanders' speech Monday night at the convention, as opposed to the WikiLeaks email controversy swirling around the DNC and its leader, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Despite all of this, it's not certain that Sanders' followers will be so willing to forgive. Let's talk about it right now with Karen Finney. She is senior advisor and senior spokesperson for Hillary for America. Karen, great to have you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Big week for your team.
We're excited.
Let me ask you to set the stage for us.
Sure.
What will be the most important takeaways, do you think, when it comes to policy, what we'll hear from the speakers this week?
Well, I think a couple of things. I mean, we're excited, obviously. The rollout with Tim Kaine was exciting, and people are really looking forward to hearing from him during this convention. But I'll tell you what you're going to hear over the next 4 days. It's a very different tone and a very different set of ideas, obviously. You're going to hear a lot from real people who are people out in this country who are making a difference, helping to solve problems. When we're talking about quality child care or early childhood education or gun safety, what's working and who are some of the people who are working on those issues. And that also folds into the vision that Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine have for this country, and that is, how do we get people back to work? She talked a little bit yesterday about investing in infrastructure to create jobs, so we'll talk about that. Increasing incomes. We'll talk about health care. How do we build on the Affordable Care Act and get more people into the system? We'll talk about criminal justice reform. We'll talk about gun safety.
These are exactly the issues that the other side is taking issue with. For example, if you're looking to create economic growth, how do you move the needle on economic growth if Hillary is planning on raising taxes on the highest earners? That includes small business. She's planning on raising minimum wages. That's going to make it tougher for business. And she wants to build on the president's legislation, Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. These are the issues that business says, this is why I'm not hiring right now.
Well, here's a couple things that I would say. I mean, one, we've found there are businesses out in this country that are, sharing the profits with their workers and who are showing that it can be done, that you can be profitable and that you can invest in your workers. So you're going to hear us highlight some of those strategies, and that is part of her economic plan. Everything and all of her plans is paid for. It's all on our website. Everything. She believes that you got to tell people how you're going to do it and what you're going to do. So when we talk about things like raising taxes on the highest earners, the idea is, how do we get more money into people's hands in the middle class, because that in turn will stimulate our economy.
Yeah, but my point is how is it going to stimulate if these guys are going to say, oh God, my expense side of the business just went up, I've got higher taxes, I'm not going to add another person to my payroll.
Well, but look, what we're talking about is creating incentives for companies that keep jobs here in this country, that invest in their employees here in this country, as a way to, you can still make money and do the right thing and invest in your employees, and that's what you're going to see.
And I know we're going to hear from some very important leadership speakers this week, President Obama, Michelle Obama, Bernie Sanders. I got to ask you about the WikiLeaks story. 20,000 emails were unleashed on the internet by WikiLeaks, and many of them basically suggest that the Democrats, the Democratic National Committee, is in the tank for Hillary Clinton. They're all saying basically, well, look, let's come up with this idea. Let's come up with this narrative to make Bernie look bad. Here's one. I'm going to show it on the screen. This is a silly story. Bernie Sanders is not going to be president. That from Debbie Wasserman Schultz to a colleague. And then there's another one from the CFO of the DNC on Bernie's faith. We all know he's Jewish, but they're trying to throw it out there that maybe he's an atheist. It might make no difference, but Kentucky, can we get somebody to ask really about his beliefs? Does he even believe in God? He had skated on saying he has a Jewish heritage. I think I read he is an atheist. This could make several points difference with my peeps, he writes. This is the CFO. My Southern Baptist peeps would draw a big difference between a Jew and an atheist. How do you explain that?
Well, I will leave it to the DNC to explain that because obviously the Clinton Hillary for America campaign is not the DNC. So I will leave it to them to explain. And look, I feel confident that we believe there was a fair process in which, I mean, that was certainly everything that we tried to make happen, where people got to come to the polls, whether it was a caucus site or a polling site, have their voices heard and have those votes counted. At the end of the day, Hillary Clinton did win fair and square. And that's what we're here as a party to come together and celebrate and talk about, as I say, the vision that she has for the country. And one other thing I want to mention is you're going to also learn a little bit more about Hillary Clinton herself and some of the fights of her life in terms of fighting for kids and families and child care, and how do we, again, sustain economic growth and keep our country safe. You're going to learn, you're going to hear from some of the people who've worked with her. You're going to hear, for example, from some folks from 9/11. One of her big fights was making sure that New York got the resources and our first responders got the resources they needed for health care after 9/11. So part of it is, I think you're going to hear an optimistic view of this country, a realistic view that, yes, we still have challenges to solve, but at the same time, here's a positive vision of how we're all going to come together and solve these problems. You are not going to hear her say, I alone can solve these problems. I can tell you that.
The reason that I ask is because obviously, we saw real division last week at the Republican National Convention, where Ted Cruz comes out and basically doesn't endorse Trump. You wonder if you're going to see a similar situation there with Bernie Sanders, because now it's all out in the open. Everybody knows that the DNC was actively rooting for Hillary, pushing her forward, and the Sanders supporters are not happy about it.
Well, again, I haven't seen all of the emails, so I can't comment on what they do or do not say. I've heard there are plenty that are quite mundane, but more importantly, I think Senator Sanders, he has full-throated endorsed Hillary Clinton. He has made it very clear that he is committed to making sure that Donald Trump does not become president. So I think you're going to hear him again endorse Hillary Clinton. He brought a lot to this race and helped to put some real important issues front and center during our primary contest. Some of those issues we're actually going to be talking about in the general election. So there's a lot of pride in what he did and what his folks were able to accomplish. But there's also a sense of now we're coming together as a party because the values that we share, and even during the primary, some of the differences between Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton were not as big as when you've got Donald Trump saying climate change is a hoax and you've got two other people discussing policy on how do we deal with climate change. Those are bigger differences.
But isn't it really pushing her? I mean, she was at one point considered sort of in the middle when her husband was president, obviously.
Yes. Actually, when remember that when he was president, she was the lefty. That was the concern.
But isn't she much more of a lefty than she's ever been because of Bernie Sanders? By the way, Bernie Sanders says Debbie Wasserman Schultz should step down. Do you agree with that? I'm
going to leave that to Bernie Sanders to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on that. Look,
But it's all because of these emails. So it's like this is not a crazy idea that the DNC is in the tank for Hillary. We know that.
Well,
and these emails, this WikiLeaks obviously shows that there was more support for Hillary than there was for Bernie. And I guess the Sanders supporters are angry.
I understand that, but I guess what I would say to push back on that is we ran a fair campaign. We ran a very hard campaign, and I don't want in any way, shape, or form for that to take away from how hard Hillary Clinton and all of the wonderful people who worked on our campaign during the primary worked. People worked hard, and the bottom line is people came out, they stood in line, they went to caucus sites, they voted. And the numbers show that Hillary Clinton had 3 million more votes than Senator Sanders, she won fair and square.
Chelsea Clinton's going to speak on Thursday. Will she be introducing her mother?
Maybe. We'll see.
Let's just keep the mystery out there. Karen, good to see you.
You too.
We'll be watching, of course, and we wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Karen Finney joining us there.